Well, welcome to Conversations with Dr. Harriet and our special guest, Bishop Tyrell Brown. How are you?
I am doing great. I'm excited about what God is going to do in October because I want to tell you that October is going to be better than September.
Wow, somebody needed to hear that. And actually, with our topic for today, it goes perfectly. It's surviving the storms of life.
Yeah.
But before we get to our topic for today, can you tell us a little bit about yourself for those maybe a few people who may not know you?
Yes, I've been blessed to be married for 27 years. I have three beautiful daughters. I'm the pastor of the Morning Star Baptist Church in Richmond, and I oversee Village of Hope Church in Atlanta, Georgia. I've truly been blessed. God has giving me things I never thought I would have. And that's why the spiritual warfare intensity is so great. When God is doing something for you and taking you somewhere, the devil will attack you as hard as he can to distract you, to get you off course. And that's why we want to talk today about surviving the storms of life.
That's so good. And I loved how when you introduced yourself, you first mentioned your wife, and I think a lot of ministers miss that, your first ministry is at home. So you mentioned your wife and you mentioned your kids, and then you mentioned that you were a pastor. So that's a word for somebody watching today, when you got to put it in order. God likes order. And so that's why you're so successful because you know exactly what to do, right?
That's right.
So now I know you have some books that are out. Tell us about your books.
Yes, I have five books out, and I hopefully will be finishing my sixth book, hopefully by the end of this year. My first book, where I did my dissertation thesis on, was how to handle and overcome conflict in the church. And the reason why I wrote that, a lot of leaders, a lot of pastors and bishops, we deal with conflict, but we don't know how to overcome them. Sometimes the conflict, we didn't cause it. It's tradition. It's what the last leader did. So I wrote a book on how to handle conflict in the church. My second book was spiritual principles for everyday living, which I basically took my sermons and wrote little positive nuggets where somebody can read it. My third book, me and my wife did together, we talked about communication and relationships, communication and marriage. Communication is the key because if you can talk through things, you can make it through things. My fourth book was How to Let Your Light Shine. It talks about how to advertise your business or your ministry. Jesus said to be fishers of men. And so we have to release different baits. When my grandfather would go fishing, he had different baits to catch the fish. And so you got to have different things in your church, marketing to help do that. My fifth book, which is becoming my favorite book, is Jesus is the relief for grief. And recently, February the 7th, unfortunately, I lost my father, my man, my dude.
Sorry
Uh,
to hear that.
yes, I still deal with it. But he's in a better place. He's in a better place. Dad was suffering from cancer. Dad had a heart attack and stroke. I know that God doesn't make any mistakes, but it's just a natural human element to grieve. And so I wrote, talk in this book, How to Handle Grief. Jesus is the relief for grief. My father was born July 7th, married my mother June the 7th, passed on February the 7th, the seventh child of his mother and father. He was 67 and 7 months.
Wow.
And we know that the number seven means completion. I had to do his eulogy. He demanded it, enforced it. And he wrote his own service out all the way to First Lady Brown read his obituary. He was actually ready to go. He was
Wow.
ready to go. But when you lose something, and I know you lost your father back in 2012, I believe, right?
Right, right.
You know, when it's one of something, the pain intensifies. You know, you lose your cousin, you cry. Somebody played football with in high school, but your mom, your dad, that's your immediate friend. That's just a different piece. But God has given us grace. He's given us peace. And I find myself now helping other guys out who have lost their dad and have to preach their eulogy. So all things work together for the good.
Wow. And where can they find your books?
They can find my books at uh, our website. Our website. They can call the church 804-233-7561, and everything will be on Amazon in October. Everything will be on Amazon in October. So next time you bring me back, all of my books will be on Amazon. Amen.
Man, that's so good. Well, we're talking today about surviving the storms of life. And
Yeah.
I know in this season, especially, during the pandemic, people have lost so much. They've lost family members, they've lost, work opportunities, they've lost, different items in their life that they were holding close to them.
Yeah.
And it's their storm. And so we're talking about today how to survive the storms of life. I know that, it's easier said than done. A lot of people who haven't been are easy to tell you, oh, get over it. It'll be fine. But when you're in the midst of it, how do we survive that? So talk to us a little bit about that.
When I was growing up in New Brunswick, New Jersey, we would go to my grandfather's house, and I noticed something. He was from North Carolina, and so when the storm would come, he would tell you to sit down, don't move, be quiet, don't go to the bathroom. He would cut the TV off, and you had to just sit there. And I noticed no matter how long the storms were, no matter how loud the storms were, eventually that storm would pass and come to an end. Same thing in life. Whatever storm you go through, it has a timetable on it. Paul says our afflictions only last for a moment, which means that whatever you're dealing with, it has a time limit on it. And so many people will go to church, but when storms come, they don't know how to handle it or face it. I love that passage in Luke chapter 8, verse 22, when Jesus said, when the disciples are on the boat and they was talking about, Matt, teacher, is storming, is raging, and Jesus woke up and said, where is your faith? And so when you go through a storm, you have to find out how much faith you have. I know somebody right now going through a physical storm. They're going through a physical storm. Sickness comes upon them sometime, and the pain is unconceivable. But they have to realize that you got to have faith the size of a mustard seed, and God will do it. And then you go over there and Mark, and Jesus, they said, Jesus, the storm is raging. And Jesus said, peace be still. And so even today, when we face storms, the pandemic, our jobs, whether you're in a storm financially, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, whether your nickels are fickle and your dimes don't come on time and your dollars don't want to holler, come on, your pennies are not plenty and your money is funny, your change is strange. It has a time limit on it. And I'm a believer that if you have faith, you will be able to overcome that storm, come out of that storm, and then reach back and help somebody else who's in a storm to come out of it.
That's so good. And I like that you said that even, the storm can pass over.
Yeah,
And a lot of times it may have damage with that storm, but we can get over it. We cannot get over it, but we can deal with it.
sure.
We could figure out how to make it through.
Yeah,
And so, yeah, I love that you said that. And it's so funny that I think all of us, especially in African American homes, can relate to that. That when the storm would come and our parents we'd have to sit down, TV went off. I don't understand that. We couldn't watch TV,
uh,
we couldn't move around, we had to sit there until that storm passed over. And that's a great, analogy for even now. We have to sit through it. We have to go through it. And and the other side, once you get on the other side, then you're like, wow, I did survive that. It was hard. I have a few scars, but I survived.
yeah, yeah. And I never forget my first cousin, Preston. He's 7 foot tall. I'm 6'3". I never forget. He said, Granddad, I got to go to the bathroom. My grandfather said, hold it. He told us, you don't move during the storm. And even on yesterday, I preached out of Exodus 14 when Moses was giving the children of Israel divine directions on how to cross the Red Sea. He said to them, Amplified Version, remain calm, remain calm. And you have to remain calm when you are in a storm. Look at that, Exodus 14. He said, remain calm. And so many times people go through storms and challenges and we get all excited, we get bent out of shape, and then we talk to the wrong people. We talk to bathroom bishops, parking lot prophets, after church
Oh, not bathroom bishops
bath
and parking lot
prophets,
prophets.
after
Wow.
evangelists, instead of getting on our knees to the problem solved. I'm gonna be very transparent. I know a lot of people watching. I want to help somebody today. When my father passed, I had a feeling that came over me. I don't even know the word for it. I was at our church. It was February the 7th. We were celebrating our pre-anniversary. One of my sons in the ministry from Alabama was on the screen talking to us. And my mother never calls me during service. She had texted me, how's Lisette? How's the kids? I went to see dad. Call me when church over. But she kept calling, kept calling, kept calling. And the spirit just told me right there, said, that's dad. And so even then I got the call. I came back inside. I said, church, my father passed. I got to go. But I, even in the middle of that storm, God let that happen while I was around my church family. He didn't let it happen when I was on a plane going somewhere. And then with the number sevens, my dad's life was completed. Now I'm like everybody else, and sometimes we get super spiritual, absent from the body, present with the Lord. I know that, but it's just a human, natural feeling to feel something, especially when you know your dad. I have two brothers. I'm the only one that's a preacher like him. We're sports fanatics. Even last week, I was watching the Ravens game, and if he was here, the phone would be ringing, especially after the Ravens won. So those triggers make you feel that you missed them. And then three things I want to tell somebody who's facing a grievous storm, you lost somebody. Number one, remember the good times. Remember the good time. I would throw a big party for my father every year. We went to all types of sporting events. Um, then number two, remember what that person taught you. Remember, I never forget. I was going into 10th grade, and my father said to me, "There's only one spot on the varsity team. You're gonna be the only 10th grader. The JV team get the varsity's old uniforms. The JV team don't have no games on TV." And so he pumped me up. I went out there, became a starter for varsity in 10th grade. And my school was a very athletic school. When you go to inner city school, I mean, almost every other person is a good basketball player. And I was able to get 1,000 points, went to college, met my wife in college, had a scholarship. So I had to focus on, I have to remember the good times. Then I remember what he taught me. And then this is what gives me hope and peace. Number three, remember that you will see your loved one again. Those three, remember the good times, remember what they taught you, remember you'll see them again. Because I got to focus on the positive while I'm in the storm. And so it was tough. He demanded I did his eulogy. My father told me, if you let somebody preach my eulogy, I'm going to come out the grave and get. So I was standing up there crying on the inside while I was preaching it, but it was a very uplifting, energetic service. Sure, do I wish my father saw his 70th birthday? Do I wish he was still here? Of course, but we know God makes no mistakes. And we go through those three elements. We go through the shock first when somebody passes. Then we go through denial. You be like, no, this didn't really happen. And then you have to face reality. So we're in reality. And but I know dad is looking down. He's in a better place. And so that's the storm that I had to deal with this year. The storm from my church, we actually saw God's grace. We never stopped. God told me don't stop. We went outside for several months, but we never stopped. And it became a blessing because two churches actually had to rent out our space, and we went to one service, and I see that the church has come together tighter. So whatever you're going through, God is in the midst of it. You got to see the Messiah in the mess. You got to see Jesus in the middle of the junk. and realize that storms have a time limit on them.
That's good. And I love what you said about even those three steps. I just saw recently on Facebook, it was actually, she's the celebrity who lost her mother,
Hmm.
and she was asking for help.
Yeah.
It's now been a few months, and she was like, please help me. I need to know how I can get over this grief. And so everybody was, saying the normal, oh, just pray, and she's in a better place and think about that. And so I actually was very real to her, and I told her my mother has been gone for now almost 28 years. You
Wow.
don't get over it. You
Oh,
don't get over losing a parent. You don't get over losing a mother or a father. And
right.
again, my father has been gone since 2012, and I said you don't get over it, but you learn how to deal with it.
Yeah.
And I said, my thing was thinking of the good times. So just like you said, I think about funny stuff. My mom didn't know she was so funny. So, she was so funny. We laughed at her so much that she always told us, okay, one day you're going to get kids and they're going to laugh at you too. And my kids do laugh at me for everything. And so, but I do, I think about some of the funny stuff I share that even with my kids, when they're thinking of, they say, wow, I really miss grandma. And I'll say, remember when she did such and such? And it's always puts a smile on our face to do that. So, you're not going to you don't get over it.
No,
You just learn how to deal with it. And I love that just thinking about the good memories is definitely one of the ways. Now, what happens when a person, whenever they're dealing with any type of storms, we're talking about surviving the storms, what happens if it's just too much for them to handle? I've gone to all my friends, I've gone to the parking lot prophets, I've gone to my pastor, I've gone to my friends, and I'm still having trouble getting out of bed. When
sure.
is enough and you need to get a little more help than you can get from that parking lot prophet?
Be very honest with you, it was overwhelming for me. I have done hundreds of funerals. I've pastored in Baltimore, I've pastored in Virginia, and I've pastored in Georgia. I've done funerals big and small, upbeat, sad, and it did get overwhelming. But what helped me, what I had to find, was stress busters. So I have a video game. Remember old Miss Pac-Man?
You're right.
Mr. Pat, I have a video game, it's my stress buster. I was playing golf, haven't really done that in a while. I love watching sports, but you have to find a stress buster, a outlet that for 1, 2, 3 hours you're not thinking about it. And then I was really the thing that made my father so special is that he taught me how to be a man, a man, a man, not a boy, a man. And so some of the life lessons, I didn't see them at 10, 11, and 12, but I see them now. For example, my father would say, God letting it snow, is letting it snow today so you and your two brothers can make us some money. God letting the leaves fall off the trees today so you and your two brothers can make us some money. There's a lot of dirty cars out there that you and your two brothers go wash. Y'all getting the paper route tomorrow. And the whole thing about it was the scripture, if a man don't work, he does not eat. And so he was building that work ethic inside of us. And then I would ride with my father to church and he would say little things and then realize he was shaping my preacher's brain. And so just a lot of different principles that I find that I could pass to my kids. Principles. We could buy our kids things all day. There's nothing wrong with doing that. We should buy them things. But it's the principles that will outlive you. So I have a work ethic. My two brothers have a work ethic. And he just taught us how to be men and to believe in yourself. And he used sports as a vehicle to do that. So, for example,
Okay.
my
Go
old
ahead.
yeah, my older brother is an outstanding baseball player. I could not be Andre in baseball. And so we would go down to the school. We were brothers walking there. And then after the baseball game, we would walk home not talking to each other. But he could not beat me on a basketball court. So that competition was being pushed. And my father said, I'm going to get a winner $5. whoever won the checker game. So he built this competition and stuff that I find that has been helpful today, especially in ministry, because it's been more challenging as ever. Churches are losing their buildings, pastors are resigning. One pastor a little while ago said to me, said, Bishop, we were behind on our bills when we weren't having church every Sunday. And so I'm just thankful that the people of Morning Star have come through because we taught them how to give. We taught them how to tithe. We taught them how to give. So we haven't missed a beat. Two churches are renting our building out. We're in a good place. Even yesterday for Pastor Love, we played the song "We Are Family," and we are a strong family. And again, that was the storm that I faced, and that's how I got over it and through it. And like you said, you never get over it. I should say you learn how to deal with it.
Right. So we're actually suggesting to even people now to sow into your family. That's one thing. To sow now so they will have a legacy later. So we definitely, that's a whole nother show that we need to talk about. But to remember all of everything that you had learned from, your ancestors and your people who passed on, to appreciate what you've learned from them. Now, my question to you, Pastor, is that I know this is kind of taboo in the church, but when is it time to go and seek more counsel? When is it time to seek a professional? Because some people are really having a hard time dealing with, grief. They're dealing with things that they're having. Tried to turn around. They've had to pivot during this time, with the pandemic, with losing jobs or whatever. And a lot of people are really struggling more than, their pastor maybe can help them or a friend can help them. Is it okay for them to go and seek outside professional counsel? There's a lot of Christian counselors, so we need to hear that from our pastors as well. Tell us a little bit about what you think about that.
Yes, mental health is real. Stress is real. Yes, it is okay to get professional counseling if that person is qualified. Because one thing about grief, everybody handles it differently. And somebody don't have to die for you to have grief. It could be loss of a job, loss of a relationship, bad report from the doctor. So it is okay to get professional counseling for you and your family. It is okay to do that. Um, in some cases, you need to get all the help you can get. You need to get all of the help that you can get because you can know and be prepared this person's going to leave. But it's something about seeing them in that casket. It takes a whole
Absolutely.
other. I even tell people, you do the first viewing, don't ever go by yourself. Always have somebody with you. So again, to answer your question, yes, it is healthy. It is good. God is not going to be mad if you get professional counselors with somebody, a therapist or a counselor who is certified in that field. I highly recommend it.
We also, and I'm not going to mention names, but we do know a pastor in our city who wife is has cancer and has been really having a tough time. And he said that he had to go and get counseling to help him
Yeah.
deal with, his wife and dealing with, the issues with his wife. And then, of course, being a pastor, you all have so much extra that you deal with. You deal with your own family, then you have your church family, and then I heard a pastor say on my show a couple of weeks ago, he was saying that, the pastor has preached all these funerals, and
Yep.
who has given him a hug?
Yeah.
Who has said, I'm sorry for your loss? Because when it's one of your members, you grieve with the family because most of the time that's your family too. And he said he had to actually go and get counseling. And so, we just need to remind ourselves, in the Black church especially, it seems it's just taboo to get counseling. And I don't know why that came up, because I think we're the ones who need it most.
Some people look at it as a sign of weakness. When my father died, I went to grief counseling because it was that devastating. It was, and nobody else understands it unless they've had a father or parent to pass. That's why I don't tell people no more. I know how you feel. I say I can imagine how.
Right. because you don't know how they feel. They may not be as close to their parent as you were close to your parents. So right. And they may, just like with you had such a special relationship with your dad. A lot of people don't have that relationship with their dad. So, that I love that. I can imagine how you feel. That's a good, we need to actually remember, y'all need to remember that. Because a
Yeah,
lot of people don't know what to say to people when somebody passes. And I hear some of the stuff I hear, and I'm like, God needed a new flower for his garden. What? So now I'm mad at God because you can get another flower. Why'd you have to take my flower?
yeah,
So people say some of the craziest stuff to people during grief. And so we just have to remember, I love that.
yeah,
I can imagine how you're feeling, and I'm praying for you. Simple as that. That's all we need to know. And seriously, pray for that person when you say that. Don't just have a cliche to say, "Oh, I'm praying," or put up the prayer hands, on social media whenever you haven't said a word of prayer for anybody. So I love that. That's good. Now, during this time and I know we're running out of time, but during this time that people, of course, during the pandemic, they've had to pivot, they've had to change jobs, they had to, figure out how to live without that loved one. What would you say an encouraging word? And I know we're coming up on our last few minutes, but just give us an encouraging word on how God is just so wonderful and how he will bring you out. I'm not telling you what to say, but give us an encouraging word, Pastor.
yeah. One scripture that was my anthem during the time that my father passed was Nahum chapter 1, verse 7. Nahum in the Old Testament. You don't hear about that book too much, but there's a line in there, chapter 1, verse 7, says, "The Lord is good, a stronghold in the day of trouble, and he knoweth them that trust in him." The Lord is good, a stronghold in the day of trouble. He knoweth them that trust in him. And so I had to put my trust in God. And I said, God, you got to get me through this. You got to help us out. My father and mother knew each other for 57 years, since they were 10 years old. And so I had extra pain because I saw the grief in my mother's eyes. My dad clearly made me in charge. And so I had a lot of extra weight on my shoulders because everywhere I looked to get strength, I looked at my uncle, my father's brother-in-law, and he sat in the pulpit behind me the whole time and was sniffling and crying. And so everywhere I looked to get strength, people were trying to get strength to me. But when I went to the Bible, and then I read in Psalms, that this poor man cried, Psalms 34:6, and the Lord saved him and delivered him out of all of his troubles. And so those scriptures gave me comfort to say, okay, if Nahum went through this, if David went through this, if Moses, if Shadrach, Meshach, and if they went through that and God helped them, he will help me get through my loss and my situation and my storm.
Right. And we're just encouraging people to go to the word. That's
Yes.
another thing. Go to the word. There's so many scriptures, that are in the word. And also, I love that your book is about grief as well. Tell us again about that book.
Jesus is the relief for grief. We went through a period at our church where I did 6 funerals in 30 days. I did 6 funerals in 30 days. People mother, people sister, people brother, people husband. And I sat down to write this little booklet to give people encouragement. And then it was something because God let me write it. And then my father passed. I had to go back to the book that I wrote and read the scriptures that
To
he.
encourage yourself.
So here's the scripture right here. Matthew 5:4. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. This means we should comfort those who mourn. Your day will come when you need a hug, someone to pray for you, or to help release your tears of pain. And so, uh, you know, God will never leave us nor forsake us. We can't forget that. And He's been walking with me. It's been 210 days, and He's been reminding me that He's right there with me. And He's actually used this for me to help other pastors who have to eulogize their mother or father. And
That's so good. That's so good. Well, thank you. We're running out of time, but thank you so much. Bishop Tyrell Brown, make sure to go to his website. Make sure to buy the books. If you're having a conference, a men's conference, or any type of conference, definitely call him. He would definitely bless your church. Thank you again, Bishop. I appreciate you being here. And so definitely come back again. We'd love to have you back again. So that is our show for today. Remember, today only happens once. So make it amazing. Thank you, Bishop. Conversations with Dr. Harriet right here on the Power Network. Have a wonderful day.
Have a wonderful day. Thank you, Harry. God bless you. Thanks for having us.